Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Women of the Bible here at Sweet Sycamore. I'm Nicole, and I'm so glad that you are here. We're going through Mary Magdalene, Mary from Bethany, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, in short 10-minute devotions for 8 weeks. If you're joining me for the first time, welcome. Make sure and subscribe through YouTube or follow through podcast platforms to be notified of all the upcoming episodes. We just wrapped up Mary Magdalene, and in today's devotion, we are going to start with Mary from Bethany. We will go through her story chronologically throughout the next 2 devotions. Her story starts in Luke 10, verses 38 through 42, where it says, "As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, 'Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits there while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me.' But the Lord said to her, 'My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her.'" Now we are going to speak about Martha on another occasion in another devotion. Today, I want to speak primarily about Mary and what we can gather from her. It may actually surprise you that Mary was the one forsaking her duties in this story. Martha was following the protocol, the tradition of the day, which was for the women to cook and prep and serve the food while the men sat and discussed important matters. Women were not allowed in intense religious conversations. But here in the scriptures, we actually see that not only was she there, but she was listening to what Jesus taught. We also see that Jesus was encouraging her to sit, and he wanted her to be there. Martha was worried about so much, but Jesus said there is only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it. So what is it? What had Mary discovered? Tell us, Jesus, tell us. And that is it. That's where the story ends. So what was it? Honestly, I feel like we're sitting here in a season finale, like on the cliffhanger, wondering if it's going to be renewed for like a new season, because I just got to know. Well, the great news is she is actually picked up in a new season, and we will hear more about Mary. Actually, through these next devotions, when we dig into her life following the story, we're going to find out exactly what it is. But let's pause to take a practical lesson from Mary's life. When was the last time you spent time with Jesus? Not when all the dishes were done, the house was cleaned, you get completely ready, but when you actually put aside the things that will never go away and you spend time with Jesus. To be honest, I find myself really guilty of orchestrating my time with Jesus. I'm like this weird mix of Martha and Mary. I read this devotion, I study this chapter because, well, it's next on the list. I pray this prayer, I pray for these same 10 things or these same 5 people. I mark the check boxes off as I go through my time with Jesus. But one thing I've noticed about this story with Mary is she just sat and she allowed Jesus to actually orchestrate that time together. We dig into devotions and Bible studies and we glean from what God is telling others, but what is God telling you? I know, this seems like an oxymoron coming from the mouth of the girl who's like, watch my devotion, listen to this. Or maybe you shouldn't. I mean, here's what I'm truly saying. Devotions, Bible studies, journaling, they're all supposed to be supplements to you spending intimate time with Jesus. The task shouldn't take up the time. The stillness, the quiet, the listening, the reading the words of Jesus should take up majority of the time. Take time to figure out what Jesus is telling you today. What you do with Jesus will always be more important than what you do for Jesus. Well, we keep hearing about Mary from Bethany as her story continues in John 11, where it says this in verse 1. A man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair, a story we'll be coming to in our next devotion. Her brother Lazarus was very sick. So the 2 sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, "Lord, your dear friend is very sick." But when Jesus heard about it, he said, "Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this." So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. Finally, he said to his disciples, "Let's go back to Judea." It would be easy to think from the last story that Jesus had a favorite. But here it says, now Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. I want to just take a brief side note and let you know that Jesus doesn't have favorites. We are actually all equal in God's eyes. Some live a little closer to him, more at his feet. Some are maybe those people just getting stuff done, but he actually doesn't have favorites. In fact, in the story coming up, we actually see that Martha gets more one-on-one time with him than Mary does. I'm trying to stay focused on Mary, but I want us all to know, for the doers of this world, for the Marthas of this world, that Jesus does not have favorites. My boys, they're always trying to figure out which one's my favorite. It sounds silly. They're both my favorite. They're my kids. But I do handle them both completely differently, and we walk through things differently with both of them. Isn't the same true as children of God in the way he works with us? But Mary and Martha may be thinking Jesus doesn't even like them at this point, let alone a favorite, because Lazarus is dying and Jesus is 20 miles away. And it says here in the scriptures that he stayed. He could have left right away and got there in enough time, but he didn't. So if we skip to verse 17, it says, when Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave for 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Mary stayed. That's very important. Why? Why would Mary stay? Well, remember, Martha is a doer. She gets things done. Remember, Mary is the thinker. The scriptures tell us that Jesus was really good friends with Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. They were probably the closest he had to family. He spent a lot of time in their home. Martha is running. Mary is staying put, most likely with her own thoughts. Where are those thoughts? Perhaps they were, you didn't come. I sat with you. I broke protocol for you. We're friends. Like, there's legit love between you and I. And you didn't come. History tells us that in protocol that you would never run or even go to a rabbi or teacher unless called for. Mary did not adhere to tradition and protocol by sitting at Jesus' feet, but here, Mary adheres to tradition and protocol, and Martha breaks it by running and going to Jesus uncalled. So what is going on with our sweet Mary? Okay, I'm going to have to leave you on not just one, but actually 2 cliffhangers this week. But hopefully it will keep you coming back for more next week as we really discover the answers to these questions. For now, grab those girlfriends or maybe just some one-on-one time with God, and I invite you to answer the following questions. The first one is this: when was the last time you spent time with Jesus? Not discovering what God has to tell somebody else, but what he has to tell you. Truly listening to him in those quiet moments, reading his word. The second question is this: are you willing to break the protocol for Jesus? And I get it. We may be a little bit like Mary, and it depends on our mood. But for example, what if you have an urge to raise your hands in worship when no one else is doing it? What if you feel like God's telling you to get on your knees, but you know people will stare? Perhaps he'll lay on your heart to share Jesus with somebody who isn't even expecting it, or ask to pray for a random stranger in the grocery store who looks like they need some prayer. See, interesting, these 2 questions that I'm giving you, they're actually correlated, because the more you spend time with Jesus, not just doing things for Jesus, but spending time with him, the more he will call you out of the norm, perhaps even breaking some social protocols to help reach the lost. Now, we're going to return to Mary of Bethany next week. For now, thank you so much for joining me in today's devotion. If you want to be part of a community, join us on Instagram at Sweet Sycamore Devos. Now it's time to turn this off, and my prayer is that you have some meaningful one-on-one time with Jesus, just like Mary of Bethany.